where we bring you friendly neighborhood history 24/7, 365, or 366. And today I am doing my weekly, or my twice weekly, Q&A, Ask Me Anything about history, social studies, and the like, where you can ask a historian, History Hefner himself, anything you would like to about history, social studies, and all of that great stuff. And I'm going a little early today because I've got some obligations later on that may compromise my usual time slot of 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So it's currently 5:36 on the East Coast, and I'm here a few early instead of late, like I usually am, to answer all of your questions regarding history, social studies, and the like. This is the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. We've got channels on Instagram, Facebook, X, a Patreon, and a Substack where you can read my articles. Patreon, you can get early content and check out my First Ladies series, so please check those out as well. And we do this every Friday and Saturday. We live stream. We also have long form content that drops every Monday and Friday here on YouTube at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that will be coming out in a couple of hours. And then we also have, what else do we have? We have our our live stream lecture on Sundays at 4 p.m. where I don't answer your questions, but I will be talking about a particular historical topic of interest. And this weekend, I will be discussing the Dutch Republic and the Dutch Golden Age of the 17th century, and how the Dutch were one of the most formidable powers in all of Europe for a long, long time, and how they came to colonize places like New York and Indonesia. So please check that out Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and enjoy the Q&A today and the one tomorrow, both at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm starting a little bit early today. This is the Friendly Neighborhood History, and you can become a friendly neighborhood historian. It's easy as liking and subscribing and all of that great stuff. So, Harry, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. And you are not only on time, you are early, and so am I. And I guess early is on time, and on time is late, and late is unacceptable, as the old phrase goes. But believe it or not, I am actually on time. I'm actually about 20 minutes early or so, starting a little bit earlier because I've got some scheduling conflict that might pop up in about an hour or so. So I may not be able to go until 7 like I normally do. So I'm going until about 6:30 or so. And so I will be answering all of your questions for the next 50 minutes or so relating to history and social studies. So if you have anything you want to ask relating to the humanities or social studies, you enjoy the sound of my voice, the smoking jacket I have on, our studio, or the fun in the chat that we normally have, please consider liking and subscribing and joining us for the good vibes we have here. Thank God it's Friday, and thank God you're here at the Friendly Neighborhood History channel, where, again, we bring you history in a friendly, neighborly manner. So, by the way, Harry, I did my video on Emperor Norton. I hope you enjoyed it and checked it out and really liked it and everything. So I do request people who subscribe, who are the Friendly Neighborhood Historians, because anyone who enjoys history content is a historian. They can request a video done on a topic that they are interested on. And I did a video for Mr. Harry, who is a longtime Friendly Neighborhood historian and an excellent British historian in his own right. I did a video on Emperor Norton, the crazy eccentric who created his own American empire in the 1850s in San Francisco. So Harry, I know you waited a long time. I appreciate your patience. I really hope you enjoyed that video, or will enjoy it if you get a chance to look at it. But anyways, yep, so pull up a chair, get something nice and cool or hot to drink, depending on your climate, and join us for Q&A, Ask Me Anything regarding history and social studies. We've been doing these Q&As for about a year or so. We started them in May or June of 24. The channel started in February of 24, President's Day weekend. We had our anniversary and our birthday, and we are nearly 7,500 Friendly Neighborhood Historians strong. It's incredible to see what we have been able to accomplish and what has been done. All the great things that I've learned from many of these Friendly Neighborhood Historians, people who come on the channel, they come through the live streams or they come through the videos. We have short content dropping all of the time, and of course we have long form content every Monday and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Check out my compilation on the Crusades, as you can learn a general history of the Crusades in about 6 minutes or so. That will be dropping at 8 p.m. There's no audio at the very beginning, and then it's a series of videos that I made a few months back that cover the first 4 Crusades and then some other minor Crusades as well. So I hope you guys really enjoy that. But anyways, I will be here for the next 45 minutes or so answering all of your questions relating to history and social studies. It's been like 26 degrees here. We're like bright red, bold, and talking nonsense. Is that 26 degrees Celsius? What would that be in Fahrenheit? So that's 9 times plus divided by 5. I'm not a mathematician. This isn't the Friendly Neighborhood Math channel, but I imagine that's, what, the 70s in England, which is kind of hot over there. Yeah, Celsius, the correct. Yes, based. Both of them are based on well-known chemists and scientists who helped invent different ways of measuring the temperature of the Earth. So yeah, they were both named Fahrenheit. Fahrenheit, I believe, was the man who invented the first major thermometer, the first modern thermometer that was used. And Celsius is the European. I think he was Dutch, and he came up with the system for that. So we have these Q&As and Ask Me Anythings every Friday and Saturday, and then on Sundays we do a live stream lecture where I will lecture on a particular historical topic. And this Sunday I am doing the Dutch at 4 p.m. Eastern, so join us there for some good vibes and good talk about the Dutch Republic and the Dutch Golden Age in the 17th century, how the Dutch are probably the most impressive European power you've never heard of compared to the British, the French, and of course later on the Germans. So if you have a question or topic you would like to talk about regarding history or social studies, you are in the right place, and consider asking a question regarding it. Why what, Kraken? And we are the center of time, and the world is a fact. It's underdebatable. We are the center of time in the world. We put the lines there, but it still counts. That sounds about right. Grace and Mercy was asking, was Jesus black? No, nor was Jesus of Nazareth a white man. I don't know why this is significant to people in the West and Christians, people who make it a big deal about Jesus' ethnicity. Jesus was a first century Jew. He was not Arab. He was a Semite. He was a Jewish rabbi. He would not have he would have looked very Arab in many of his physical phenotypical features, but he was not. He didn't look anything like me, nor did he look like necessarily Samuel L. Jackson. He was a white. He was not white. He was not blonde-haired, blue-eyed. None of that ever holds water, and none of that is true. He was a first century Jewish rabbi, and yeah, there are different varying accounts of his physical features by people who never met him or lived with him, so we don't know exactly what Jesus looked like. Brutta is a robe symbolic. No, the robe is my general garb that I usually wear for these Q&As for my live streams, and it is a gift from one of my Patreons and a well-known friendly neighborhood historian who gave this to me during the holidays. It is a beautiful smoking jacket inspired by the British when they brought it back from the Ottoman Empire in their Crimean War in the 19th century. So let me see here. And by the way, the NBA playoffs, which I've been covering, have been getting very interesting. Go Timberwolves. They've been really incredible, and I think that the Cavaliers look almost unstoppable. So I have no idea what's going to happen with the NBA playoffs. I've been talking about it a little bit on the channel. What do I think of Theodore Roosevelt? I think he's one of the best presidents in American history. I think there's no president that has ever acted on the behalf of the people more expertly and more successfully than Theodore Roosevelt, while significantly increasing the power of the U.S. presidency. He did not act like a dictator or emperor and was able to get a lot of his agenda through Congress. At the same time, he was bold and impulsive and reckless just at the right times when he absolutely needed to be, when he needed to step in and get things done. And that's what makes him one of the greatest presidents. In my opinion, he's third or fourth on the all-time presidential list, and there is a definitive reason and a great reason why he is on Mount Rushmore. Yeah, the Timberwolves have been really great. I don't know if they're going to go all the way. I think Denver is always very dangerous with the Joker, but Oklahoma City is really good. It might be Oklahoma City and Cleveland or Oklahoma City and Boston. So, yeah. Nixon, number one. There are some people who definitely think that Richard Nixon was underrated and has gotten a really bad rap, and I am not one of them. I think Richard Nixon was a pretty good administrator as a president, but his corruption and paranoia is definitely what brought him down. His economic policies, taking America off the silver standard and price controls, turned out not to work and caused a lot of the stagflation that made the 1970s a very weak economic period for the United States. Grimbo, what about Trump? It's too early to judge Trump, but Trump seems to be going the Grover Cleveland direction. A relatively successful first term backed up by a very difficult and tumultuous second term, although it's only just over 3 months into his presidency. And some reason, and I did a couple of videos on this on the channel. I do short videos every day and long form videos every Mondays and Fridays. But for some reason, the first 100 days is significant. It never was in U.S. history. FDR created that in the midst of the Great Depression when people were suffering and wanted immediate responses. But in a modern imperial presidency where the president has way too much power that the founding fathers never intended for him to have in the Constitution, apparently the first 100 days are extraordinarily important, and Trump has done a lot in the first 100 days, but seems to be struggling, especially with the tariffs. So, Joe, I say hi back to you. Yeah. Harry, what is the bully pulpit, the prestige of the office? The bully pulpit that starts with Theodore Roosevelt is basically the idea that a strong president can get what he wants done through executive orders, through his own rhetoric and political influence. He can control the political party and thus control what they do in Congress, and he can control and highly influence his successors and those around them. And this was originally theorized to happen with Theodore Roosevelt, that he wanted to basically bully and control his handpicked successor, William Howard Taft. Taft and the Republicans resisted that, wanting to go in a more conservative direction than the progressive Roosevelt. This led to a split in the Republican Party and led to Woodrow Wilson being elected president in 1912 as a Democrat. Thank you. I'm glad I have a heavy voice. I don't know if that's a compliment or not. Harry, I think Grant is a very underrated president. His problem was he trusted people too much and his administration was corrupt, although he was not. Yeah. U.S. Grant, Ulysses S. Grant, Uncle Sam Grant, whatever you want to call him. Hiram was his original first name. Excellent Civil War general, knew how to fight in the battlefield, knew how to crush the Ku Klux Klan, fought hard for African Americans and their civil rights, fought hard for reparations, the Freedmen's Bureau, the education of blacks in the South, their ability to vote, and their right to vote to be enshrined and protected. Never could get off the ground in his second term, especially because of the corruption in his office, basically making him a political laughingstock and allowing Northern Democrats to regain power and start limiting the rights of blacks and enabling white Southerners to gain more power. Oh yes, thank you, Rabbi. I appreciate the compliment. And I appreciate you liking and subscribing, because some people come here and they just like to listen to my voice or look at the robe or just listen to us talk or enjoy the chat. Harry, I think Calvin Coolidge was the last president who really did what the president was supposed to do, not impose your agenda, but be a sort of overseer. Yes, in a way he was. I think Eisenhower also kind of wanted that. I think Gerald Ford wanted to do that. Jimmy Carter tried to do a little too much with that. George Bush Sr., considered the best president to only serve one term, also kind of wanted that. But the president in the bully pulpit with large personalities like both Roosevelt, Reagan, Obama, Trump, these presidents have changed the way we look at the presidency forever. What about Ross Perot? Do you think he would have made America an economic powerhouse? What would have been some of his weaknesses? The fact that he appealed to no one politically when it comes to mainstream issues, the fact that he was more of a libertarian when libertarians have a more offhanded view about the presidency. Perot pointed out issues that have basically undergirded the right, many libertarians on the right for a long time, like Ron Paul and Rand Paul, his son, but I don't think he had enough of a following inside of Washington to actually get an effective agenda done. So Trump is useless, destroying the world economy. I don't think he cares if he destroys the world economy as long as he bolsters the American one. The problem is right now he doesn't seem to be bolstering either. I think Kamala Harris is awesome. I can't give you a single reason why, and if you disagree, I'll just get really upset and scream at you. That seemed to be a huge epitaph of her supporters after she lost the election. A reason that Kamala Harris was not elected a U.S. president, as someone who has studied presidential politics and history for 20 years as a historian, which is most of my life, is that a huge way a president gets elected is the optics of actually being someone who can handle difficult issues and questions and has a substantive reason for people to support them. So a campaign cannot win when it is based on don't vote for the other guy. Whatever you think of Donald Trump, the opinion of the Biden-Harris campaign and then the Harris-Walz campaign was, we're not Donald Trump, and that should be good enough. And that might work if they weren't the incumbents and Trump was extraordinarily lowbrow. But it didn't work in 2020 when Biden actually had an agenda, and it certainly didn't work in 2024 when a lot of Americans had some strange nostalgia for the first Trump term. Like Grover Cleveland, the other president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms, his first term was much more successful seemingly than his second term, and that's definitely been the case with Trump so far, with his approval ratings being low, tariffs stalling the American economy, and a lot of people biting their nails and really worried about what Trump's trying to do. So, but yeah, the U.S. economy is shrinking. Inflation is going up. He wants to sack the head of the Federal Reserve, which she doesn't have the right to do. No, he doesn't have the right to do it, but a lot of Americans have worried about the Federal Reserve and its influence, and the 2 presidents who have desperately tried to investigate the Federal Reserve have died in office. Whether or not that's connected, I'm on YouTube, so conspiracy theories run rampant here. I'm not running rampant here with them. I'm letting them breathe out their own ridiculousness and fail. But yes, Trump has no affinity for the Federal Reserve. He has appealed to libertarians on issues like that, the Maha movement, things like that have gotten some libertarians and anti-government people on his side. Let me see here. Jazim, is it true that the Bible has changed over time? Translations have certainly changed the wording and meaning of certain biblical passages and things like that. Yes, translations have brought new understandings about certain ideas. The Bible is a text that has a huge amount of historical records that are available to it in Greek, Aramaic, and Hebrew, the three languages it was written in. And obviously, Latin is the closest sister language it was translated into in the 5th century by the Roman Catholic Saint Jerome. So it's true the Bible has changed in interpretation and translation, and people's understandings of it changed, but there's actually a very strong record for its originality in those original language. There's a huge textual tradition of the Bible, very early sources, very early extant scraps and pieces of it from early on, which doesn't sound like much but we live in a world post-printing press when it's very easy to get your hands on a copy of a book. So, yes, Harry, I know you don't like Donald Trump, and I understand exactly why. When will you start looking at drill history? What drill do you want to look at? Harry, I don't think that's fully true that the Americans they did demand that with NATO, but the truth of the matter is the vast majority of Europe and European and NATO members have depended on the United States military and political prowess to be able to not have to worry about large militaries, large military budgets, things like that. The United States has had a global and dominant influence and a disproportionate amount of control over these international organizations that now it doesn't want to have anymore. Do you think it's worrying that there aren't strong presidential candidates anymore? I don't know. I think that the 2028 presidential field is going to be very, very interesting. I'm not sure. The election in Canada sees the first major turnback. There seemed to be a rightward shift, and now there is a recapture of when many believe that the Conservatives in Canada would definitively win the prime ministership and control of Parliament. The Liberals struck back with Mark Carney, who's very likable, was endorsed by President Trump of all people, and seems to be a very steadying, moderate force for the Canadians. So it goes back and forth all the time. Are you investing in crypto? No, I don't have the funds to do that. Get me monetized and maybe I will. Trump does have money. That's for sure. And a lot of people with money don't care about the little people. How does it feel to be a 50-year-old? I don't know, Bonus. I'll let you know when I get there. I have hair. This isn't a toupee, so I don't look anything like him. Angel, hello. Welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. If you guys are enjoying this, be sure to like and subscribe. I'm just going through the chat, trying to catch up as soon as I can to all of the questions and topics you guys have brought up. Yeah, David, that's true. There is an availability for the original languages of many ancient texts, and obviously you cannot understand the Quran, for instance, unless you understand thoroughly the Arabic language. This is a long-standing Muslim claim. It is 100% true that the Bible has changed many times over the years, but Christians deny this fact because the core value they believe has stayed the same, so they refuse to acknowledge that. And interpretations have changed as well. What do you do? I'm a historian, and this is my live stream that I do every Friday and Saturday where I answer all of your questions related to history and social studies. Most of the Christian religion was stolen from the Jewish religion, and the idea of how it was stolen from an actual Norse character and added to the Bible at a later date. That's not fully true, Bryce. There was definitely some semblance of an afterlife of punishment in the Christian religion that isn't in Judaism, but Christianity did start as an offshoot of Judaism that simply believed that Jesus of Nazareth was the Christ, the Messiah. That's why I don't call him Jesus Christ, because Christ is the term meaning Messiah, and that is not a worldwide acknowledgement. It's interesting, Islam acknowledges Jesus as the Messiah, but not Judaism. In 1999, Tony Blair and the French president got together and said we needed a European defense industry and a European army. The U.S. Secretary of State made it very clear this would not be tolerated, and that if they do this, Europe would be left defenseless by the U.S., which it's about to be. So, and the fact that the U.S. can financially bankrupt them and can abandon them defensively just shows how inordinately and disproportionately influential the U.S. is in European politics and affairs, more influential than Britain, which has distanced itself on and off from European affairs. I don't love Trump. I've been very critical about him. And the Bible did not tell you to be so MAGA, and you don't have to shout that out, young CEO. Swear me to death, G.D. Vance is a heartbeat away from the presidency. Yes, as many people were worried with Kamala Harris. I'm not giving political opinions. I'm giving them based on geopolitical and historical trends that I think are particularly important, because presidential history is part of history, and I love all types of history, and I hope you guys do too. And if you do, consider liking and subscribing and becoming a friendly neighborhood historian. Let me see here. Hi, MT. Thank you for joining us. You're looking for an American baby girl. You're not going to find her here. Let me see here. Catching up to the chat. There is a lot of spam. Does Jesus have a last name? Yeah, Mr. Christ. That's the joke from The Simpsons. Christ is not a last name. It's technically a title. I don't know what Trump did to affect the India and the Indian stock market. What India is doing right now with Kashmir and Pakistan will definitely impact the Indian stock market. Islam claims that he is only a prophet, not that he is a Messiah. No, they claim that he is the Jewish Messiah and that he was born of a virgin, believe it or not. I hope so, Justin. I hope to be famous one day. This is what we're going for. Islam acknowledges Jesus as a prophet, but does not believe he is the Son of God. The Son of God and Messiah are not synonymous in Islam. How long have you been presenting as male? As long as I've been around, and I'm happy to present that way. Have you heard of Scientology? It would be great if you joined. I'm okay. Let's be clear, I don't want to be a Scientologist. I often yeah, okay. Harry, it was completely stupid that we allowed ourselves to become dependent on the U.S. It was the worst decision we ever made when we stopped developing our own aircraft, ships, tanks, vehicles, guns. That was the agreement. The U.S. pays all of the defense and military bills of Europe, and Europe allows the United States to have an inordinate amount of influence over their affairs, both in Europe and in their colonies, like in Africa and Indochina with Vietnam. So, anyways, Timu Hugh Hefner. How about history Hugh Hefner? History Hefner is what they usually call me. So Bailey, that's inaccurate. Who do you think is right, India or Pakistan? I did a video about this, and interestingly enough, these divisions were created by the British, and I know Harry's going to love hearing that. But basically, the British decided in 1947 that they were going to decolonize India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. India didn't exist before that. In the medieval and early modern period, it was known as Hindustan, the land of the Hindus. Pakistan did not exist at that time. It was part of the Indian subcontinent known as the Mughal Empire at the time, the Delhi Sultanate that became the Mughal Empire in the 16th and 17th centuries. It was eventually the British who colonized it and made it part of their empire in 1858, with the crown, the jewel of India, becoming the jewel in the crown of the Empress Victoria, and the British basically controlling India indirectly for almost a century until 1947, seeing the biggest problem in India as religious between Muslims and Hindus, which had been a problem for centuries, but had been controlled by the Mughal Empire. The British decided to separate the Muslim majority lands into two countries, or a Western and Eastern country, and the Hindu majority lands with Punjab, which is where the Sikhs are, into the main country of India. And that's where the main country of India is born. It is the Hindu majority land that the British left, where the western part of Pakistan is Pakistan today, and the eastern part of Pakistan broke away from Pakistan and in 1971 became the country of Bangladesh, both Muslim majority countries to this day, with India in the middle. And Kashmir is a kind of like the West Bank, or the Palestine, is a disputed territory where there is Indian-led areas and Muslim Pakistani-led areas, and the debate continues to this day and is obviously raging as both sides are pointing the finger. An attack by the Pakistanis led the Indians to mobilize. The Pakistanis are now fearing an imminent war, which could cause a world war. The Indians want control of Kashmir. They want Tibet to be freed so it could be under their influence. India has been under Hammadi Modi, the current prime minister, has been very, very aggressive and nationalistic in the last few years, and has been pushing the envelope with both China and India and Pakistan. I'm not saying that it's India's fault. I'm saying what India has done geopolitically. And is actually trying to rename itself Bharat, which is the ancient Sanskrit word for India, because India, the name India, is based on the Indus River Valley, which is in Pakistan. So to get his people away from any affiliation with the Pakistanis, Prime Minister Modi wants to change the name of the country. So Zohabi, where do I stand on that whole issue? I don't know enough about Kashmir and its history to say one area deserves it or not. I know a lot about Palestine and its history, and I say both people should have a right to live there. And it's not crazy or controversial to say that, but both peoples should have a right to live there without trying to destroy each other constantly, either the West Bank settlement by the Jews or obviously Hamas and the PA. No, not Narendra Modi is destroying Indian culture and unity by Hindu versus Muslim fights. That was going on a long time before. Modi did not create that. I always mispronounce his name. Prime Minister Modi did not create that. He is capitalizing on that because he's a strict Hindu and he wants Hinduism to be the dominant force in India, which it was for thousands of years, the oldest religion in the world. The only factual evidence we've only found to support the existence of Jesus of Christ of Nazareth says that he was a 35-year-old male carpenter who was associated with. No, that's not true, Bryce. There are libels about Jesus like that, but there were testimonies by Tacitus and Flavius Josephus, so a Roman and a Jew writing for the Romans, and of course the early Christians like St. Paul and the Gospels, all within a century, 50 years, within the time of Jesus of Nazareth's life and death. There are explanations of there being a carpenter who led a following, and his believers and his followers believe he rose from the dead, making him God and the Jewish Messiah. That is well documented. Let me see. Yeah, young CEO, I do not know you in real life, and you can stop with all caps. O.J. Simpson was innocent. Yes, the well-known glove model, O.J. Simpson. Any chance President Obama is married to a man? This is a fringe right-wing conspiracy theory that I've seen on the internet before, that Michelle Obama is a man, and the only substantive evidence is how tall and burly she is, but that's because she works out and keeps herself in great shape, and I'm just going to go high when you're going low. Elijah, Scientology is a religion started in the 1950s by L. Ron Hubbard based on some of his pseudo-psychological ideas from Dianetics, a book he wrote. And it's basically, it calls itself a church. It has no affiliation with mainstream Christianity, but believes in certain psychological self-help practices, as well as associations with both occultic thinking, believing that spirits were trapped by an evil emperor millions of years ago, and people are now trying to retrace their ways back to that through going clear and other processes that the church recommends. Joe is saying, good afternoon, Professor. Good afternoon, Joe. I have a Christian friend who told me that Jesus was hung from a tree. Was it a crucifix or was it from a tree? The Christian understanding, from what I understand, is that the crucifix, tree, they're both kind of, it's wood from a tree, so it's like that. I know that certain Christian groups think differently on this. It's speculation. The Romans perfected the form of crucifixion originally created by the Assyrians, which had a person on a stake. The Romans added the T-beam in it that now gives us that shape that we all know. No, Dale, I do not share a lot about my personal life, but no offense to anyone who is. I just hope that everyone, gay, straight, and indifferent, like and subscribe and become a friendly neighborhood historian. But I think President Trump has just brought all of it to an end. No one will ever again trust the U.S. with the amount of influence it used to have and has at the moment, because people now have China. Harry, isn't that kind of what you were complaining about, that the British and French gave too much influence to America? So isn't this kind of a good thing in an indirect way? It's time for Britain and France to reclaim their influence. Are white people inherently racist, Luke is asking. So I try to stay away from social issues as much as I can and put them in a historical context. No, I don't think anyone is inherently racist or inherently discriminatory. Obviously, there's a disproportionate amount of discrimination and prejudice practiced by white people in history, and the one reason for this is one word: technology. The technology of the Europeans and Americans allowed them to interact with different cultures of non-white peoples and non-Western peoples at a much more rapid rate than those societies were able to interact with each other. This allowed for prejudice, discrimination, enslavement, oppression, imperialism, and the like that led to all sorts of horrible things like slavery, colonization, ethnic cleansings, and terrible, terrible events. Why can't Indians eat cows? Some Indians eat cows. Hindus believe that you do not eat meat, particularly cows, because of reincarnation. Sikhs are also vegetarian. Yeah. So anyways. Let me see. Who should end war between Russia and Ukraine? I'd like both to end war. And it seems like the Russians are the ones hell-bent on the war continuing, so they're the ones who have to pay. An authoritarian dictatorship that now has the high moral ground on Washington and can position itself as the defender of the rule of law and international agreement. Okay, then. Yep. Deksha, I love learning about India. I love learning about non-Western societies. People are amazed when a Westerner or an American like me actually knows his stuff about history. So the British were trying to help the Indians and Pakistanis. Help. Yeah, I don't know, Blue Baron, I don't know about help being the right word. I know they were trying to exhibit a post-colonial influence and have ties with those countries. They were hoping that they would solve the religious issues forever. They believed that the borderlands created through their partition would actually solve the issues because people wouldn't cross borders. They were wrong, just like they were in Palestine. And of course, the Muslims now want to spread to take over India. Yes, and the Hindus want to kick them out, which has been a tension between those two peoples ever since Islam first showed up in India over 700 years ago. Too many homeless people in Hawaii having children, too many homeless people in Hawaii. Okay. We're actually in a natal crisis, so I don't know about that. Let me see here, Harry. Have you seen any of the funny videos of people enough from my colony seeing a British person and being like, come back, rule again, it's funny. I would love to see those, so send those to me. If you want to correspond with me directly, email me, friendlyneighborhoodhistory@gmail.com. You can, friendlyneighborhoodhistory@gmail.com, where you can actually go into more detail if you have a conversation or feedback you want to give. TLDR, Muslims are trying to reconquer the world. They never see it that way. Islam has never seen a jihad or conquest as offensive. They see it as retaliatory because they believe the world has been set up against them. That is why Islam has done what it has done for its history. Ever since Muhammad was kicked out of Mecca and forced to go to Medina in the Hijrah, Islam sees itself as a victim responding to oppressive regimes, be it the Byzantines that they destroyed in the West, the Sassanid Persians, which they totally conquered, Christian Spain, North Africa, wherever they go, they are the oppressed. So why wars take always so much time? Some wars don't take as much time as others. Some wars are over quickly, but anytime anyone expects a war to be over quickly in history, be it the Civil War, the Second World War, which you call World War I, it lasts a lot longer. Same thing with this Russo-Ukrainian war. A lot of people thought that would be over very quickly. It's 3 years old now. It's good for America that India and China don't like each other. Yes, I would agree with that to some extent, given America's current status. When you come out as being gay? Right after you do. Dale, if you have insomnia, I'm really sorry to hear that. Listen to this channel. It'll put you right to sleep. Yeah, Angel, I'm definitely not Islamophobic. I have done a lot of history and done a lot of reading and studying on Islam, and I think it's a fascinating religion with an interesting culture, beautiful art, and fascinating history. And if you look at the most peaceful, tolerant empire in medieval history, it's not in Europe. It's the Abbasid Caliphate that ruled over most of North Africa and the Middle East. Are you pro-Palestine or pro-Israel? I'm pro-human, and I believe the war needs to stop. The Palestinians deserve to have their own state in the West Bank at the very least and not have that be infringed on by radical ultra-Orthodox Jews. And the Israelis deserve to live without having an Iron Dome to protect them, because otherwise most of their people will be killed by missiles. Are you Muslim? No. So I've got people on one hand saying I'm Islamophobic and other people saying I'm Muslim. That's the internet for you. I get called a right-wing nutjob and a left-wing idiot all the time on this channel because I present both sides in an objective manner. And it is not a Christian session. I've been answering questions related to history and social studies because this is a historical session. And basically, part of social studies is indeed the study of people's cultures, meaning their religions. Let me see here. Jesus didn't die, he fainted. No, he died. I mean, the amount of pain and excruciation that the practice of crucifixion actually involved, there, and the blood loss, there's no way he fainted. I'm not saying he rose from the dead. I'm just saying he didn't faint. As a historian, what is your favorite subject time period to read about or research? Thank you so much. My expertise, my master's is actually in Russian history and the Great Game, 19th century. So I'm a 20th and 19th century European historian with particular emphasis on Russia. So I love learning about Russia during the 17 and 1800s. But I love all types of history, and I consider myself a history chameleon, that any type of history I'm studying, I tend to really get involved with, which is why I can talk about India and Pakistan as well as I can talk about Great Britain and the United States. Was 9/11 planned? No. Well, by Osama bin Laden it was. Who was killed on this day, May 2nd, 2011. Why wars around the world are so long in time? Some wars are longer than others. What do you think of the CIA injecting STDs into children? I don't know if they did that. There was the Tuskegee experiment where the US government injected syphilis into African Americans in a horrible, horrible series of experiments to see what the effects would be on them. Those men died horrible deaths. Nomadic, you really were. Thank you, Fidels. I really appreciate it. It's good to see you here. Jason, libertarian here, so I admit my bias, but the world and US and us in the US wouldn't have half the problems now if we as the US had stayed isolationist as was intended. Convince me I'm wrong. I don't know if that's fully wrong. I think that some of the problems were indirect and some of them were direct, but not all of them were the US. Many of the problems in the world system were caused by the spread of communism during the 20th century, which I think as a libertarian, Jason, you can appreciate is obviously a bane of 100 million people's existence at least. So if you voted for Trump, you voted for white nationalism, thus you are a racist, own it. Okay, thank you, Benja, for the PSA and for yelling part of it. You can't believe an Indian people are digging graves of Muslims. That's done by influence of Modi. I've heard that before. Let me see here. No, they are not media propaganda. Trump's always afraid to be, Trumpy's afraid to be called racist. Own it. Should we annex Canada? That's not going anywhere. The only province that might want to join the US is Alberta. And conservative in Canada is not the same as conservative in America. Harry, what do you think of the right to bear arms in the US and the near total lack of regulation on buying guns? I can't buy a cannon, so there's no total lack of regulation when it comes to buying it, and there are regulations, and depending on the US state, because of subsidiary laws and the balance of a constitution, there are many restrictions in certain states like New York or California that don't exist in places like Texas or Oklahoma. Those places, it's very easy to get a gun. Obviously, there's a gun violence problem that's separate from the constitutional right to bear arms. That is enshrined and therefore a reason, and a lot of people who don't understand American civics or history and should subscribe to this channel would do well to learn why the US has a right for people to bear arms. It's the same reason the British Constitution and Bill of Rights had it initially in the 1680s, because the fear is the rise of tyrannical governments that will oppress the people, and basically the people will be out of luck. That doesn't have anything to do with should a 14-year-old be able to get an assault weapon. Mass shootings, gang violence, suicides, the vast majority of the instances are people violating gun laws that are already on the books and regulated. Actually, Islam, slavers, and Native African tribes are mostly responsible for the Atlantic slave trade. Jason M., that's absolutely true, and it was the British and French who tried to put a stop to that, and there are 10 million slaves in Africa today. Yes, it's History Hefner, and it is a smoking jacket inspired by the Brits from the 19th century. European serfs were of the same race as their lords. Yes, to some extent, and serfdom was a glorified form of slavery that bound serfs to a land and basically was a contract of indentured servitude. Nomadic, that's not going to happen. Free Kashmir from who? Nomadic, I do not do OnlyFans, but I appreciate that. I'll take that as a compliment. That's not, Islam is a, yeah, I'm going to ask you to stop saying that. That's definitely not true. And I can speak for Islam because I've studied it, and clearly you have not. Nice history and general knowledge in my country, no value of history culture. I'm sorry to hear that, Rabbi. Turn them on to my channel. Indians have good food. Yes, I love Indian food. I love Indian culture. I love Indian music. I love sitar. I love so much about India, and I really want to go there. I don't know what you're asking, Robot. Islam is a degenerate, wicked, depraved cult. Yes. And people say that about Christianity and all the other religions in the world. The criticism of Islam from the West has initiated and brought on a lot of the overreaction by Wahhabi Islam in the last century that has led to radicalization in areas like Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Palestine. No, no, we need Trump's Gaza hotel resort. I wouldn't mind living there as long as it's safe. I wouldn't mind Gaza being in that situation. Gaza was never owned by the Palestinians in history. This is a new thing that came up in the last 20 years. I'm not saying the Palestinians don't have a right to live there. I'm just wondering why Jews don't get to live there. And I don't want a Trump hotel there, but it would be nice to have women who can vote living there like they can in Jerusalem. But that doesn't mean the Palestinians don't have a right to exist or live there. I'm saying you give and take. That's what compromise is. Hello, Elijah. Thank you for joining us. But yes, Harry, the idea of Trump populating Gaza with his hotels, incredibly stupid, asinine, and I hope at the very best as an American, I pray and hope that it's just a negotiation tactic and a little bit of bluster and nonsense. Are you now or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? On the death anniversary of Joseph McCarthy, Henry's asking me if I've ever been a communist. No. But obviously that was the big question asked by the HUAC, the House Un-American Activities Committee, by chamber, what's the word again? I forget. Between House and Senate, a chamber of committee that, a bipartisan committee that worked on exposing communists in different areas of American life. I am reading the chat, Redel. You do. So, was Mohammed a Canadian? No. Are you employed? Yes, I do this and I'm a teacher. What year did Yugoslavia become in existence, and what was its name before that? Yugoslavia was created in after World War One, what you call World War One, what I call World War II, and it was a compilation of different areas. It doesn't exist anymore because those areas have retained their sovereign state, like Slovenia is an example of this. In the ancient times, it was called Illyricum. The Romans conquered it under the Emperor Augustus. But it was created, I think, in 1918 as the dissolution of the Austro-Hungarian Empire hit hard. So, yeah. Robot, I've answered your questions about war. They really did. They did that a couple times, Don, but they didn't do it as much as you think they did. Yeah, there are repercussions of America staying isolationist and of America not being isolationist. Janisa, hi, thank you for joining us. Gaiahan, great to see you. Longtime friendly neighborhood historian. Please speak a bit about the French Revolution. We glanced over it back in high school, but I've been doing some research, and it seems like such a pivot for modern democracy, for better or for worse. The French Revolution was the American Revolution on steroids. It overthrew the king, the Ancien Regime it was called, and it came about as middle class and upper class businessmen, artisans, and craftsmen were represented by intellectuals who felt that they were representing them and the peasantry, and seeking to change the way the French government was bankrupt and starving its people, overthrew basically everything, and in many ways threw out the baby with the bathwater, leading to counter-revolutions, lots of fighting, invasion from foreign powers, and created a power vacuum that was eventually filled by Napoleon. The terror of the French Revolution is very similar in many ways to the decolonization of African countries in the 1950s and 60s, which led to instability, political infighting, kleptocrats trying to seize power, bloody retribution against political enemies, and the rise of strong dictatorships. Idi Amin, Julius Nyerere, Lumumba, people like this, and the counter to that is Napoleon. Should Harry and Meghan be deported? No, they haven't done anything. Canadian here, should we stop allowing so many immigrants in the country? Fought. Well, Dale, I mean, immigration is a big issue in the United States. I don't know the history of immigration in Canada as much. I imagine there is and I've read about Chinese immigrants, there is a coattail effect from American immigration leading into Canada with large immigration, especially larger compared to Europe. The United States, the issue of immigration is not something new. The Americans have struggled with bringing in immigrants for a long time. The Europeans have struggled with it. It all depends what makes Canada Canada and how much space and wealth is there in Canada. Canada's economy is very much struggling right now. Its GDP, which was once on par with the United States, is now 3/5 the size of the United States, and that has become a huge problem. So Canada's economy may not be able to handle a larger immigrant population, depending on the type of immigrants you're talking about. There are different types of immigrants from different places in the world who bring different skill sets with them. Immigrants are not all the same. Talking about them as all the same is as insulting as calling all Brits the same when you've got Scotch, Welsh, Northern Ireland, and Irish and English. So, my question is, why wars have so long time? Some wars have long times, and some wars last a long time because neither side gets what they want, and the other side refuses to surrender for whatever reason: stubbornness, arrogance, wanting to win, wanting to gain more land and power. People are leaders, and those in power and with privilege are very, very good at looking the other way when their own people are suffering and dying. One of the reasons World War II ended, and Harry will like this, is the British naval blockade of the Germans in 1918 eventually led to mass starvation, and the Kaiser was forced to abdicate. And after he absconded, the German High Military Command and the new parliament set up in Weimar, because of the pressure from the Brits and the American forces in the Western Front, fell apart. Yes. Hello, Gorkum. Great to see you. Are you running for office? No, but if you want to write me in, I'm happy to be with that. And yes, Tim, this is my History Hefner robe. Yes, I heard about that, Don. They printed new money that didn't have any value, and it went south, just like the Confederacy. And guns are not illegal in the UK. They're just highly regulated. The idea they're illegal is not true. I know, Harry. You've corrected me on that, and I appreciate that. Yes, you can get a gun. It is very, very hard. Can you explain what the conflict was in Africa during World War II? What was there that was so valuable? Which World War II are you talking about? So, by the way, if you're just joining us, I think there's been 3 world wars. The French-Indian War, or 7 Years' War of the 1750s, is the first world war. I have a full-length video on the channel where I explain that. Please go check that out. But I also have, I believe the Second World War is the Great War in the 1910s. The Third World War would be the Nazis in Imperial Japan in the 40s. But basically, Africa was fought over in both world wars because of a large amount of colonies that were owned by the Germans and Italians. In the Third World War, in the Third World War, Italy took over Ethiopia, which led to fighting with the Italians and Germans against the Brits and Americans. And in the Second World War in the 1910s, there was constant fighting there because Germany had colonies next to Britain and France. Let me see here. Yeah, yes, Harry, I know the Brits are not huge fans of them. Americans aren't big fans of them either. Jason, sir, I appreciate this channel and your thoughts. My point toward isolationist policies U.S. should have stuck with would have not contributed to the rise of communism if we'd avoided World War I. Yes, but that wasn't the U.S. that caused that war. That was an isolationism. That was European imperialism. Rabbi, I've heard about that, but the truth of the matter is Jews were not allowed to enter Alaska before that, despite the fact that it's on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. What do you think about the Turkish? Oh, Gorkem, I saw your comments on my video about the Turks, and I have to respond to them in kind. I appreciate you watching that and giving me more to think about. I love Turkey. I love Turkish history. I think that obviously when we talk about, because I did a recent video, guys, about the Armenian genocide in the 1910s, which definitely happened in my opinion. But I do understand the Turkish perspective on that, and it's not just nationalist rhetoric. There are many different horrifying genocides in human history, in the 20th century especially. That is the only one that is not acknowledged by the ones who perpetrated it. No, the Russians are not lying about the Holodomor. The Germans are not lying about the Holocaust. The Cambodians are not lying about the killing fields. The Turks are definitely trying to undervalue the human suffering that they caused through the forced removal of the Armenians to the Syrian desert with no proper food or provisions in the 1915, 1916. Let me see here. Jason, as well as being allied with the Soviets in World War II, despite them conducting the Holodomor in Ukraine way before World War II. So Jason, I'm glad you know about the Holodomor and the problems with the Soviets. I agree with you to some extent about what you're saying. I think the truth of the matter is that the U.S. did not realize that Joseph Stalin was using them until it was too late. Then they started to use him, and that led to the Cold War. Why do we call them parties? Not that they're fun or entertaining, but they're groups of people, or they're parts of a whole. Let me see here. Free Palestine from who? That's always what I think. Do you believe in proportional representation as the best electoral system? Yes. Greetings from India. Oh, AR, I'm glad that you're joining us. I would love to go to India very soon. Do you think history will repeat itself? I think history repeats itself all the time. I don't know where it's going to repeat itself next, but it's heading in that direction. Appeasement of Putin seems to be the next way it's headed, although Putin does not have the fortitude or wherewithal that the Nazis did. What Putin does have is the Russian motherland, which is really, really hard to invade and conquer. So it's not like Germany in World War III. History doesn't repeat itself. It rhymes a lot, though. But in Judaism, the Messiah is an awaited king who will lead the Israelites and rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. Long time standing view, especially amongst Orthodox Jews. What's the beef between South Korea and North Korea, and how did it start? So Sankey, you might want to check out my live stream lecture from last weekend where I talked about the Korean War, or the weekend before, where I talked about the Korean War. Basically, North and South Korea were divided at the end of World War II, or as I call it, World War III, by the Allies, with the North being occupied by communist-friendly forces that set up a communist government under Kim Il-sung. I think it's called the Democratic Republic of North Korea, and that's still in play. The South was taken over by the U.S. in its interest and eventually formed a democratic government that has kind of fluctuated and is not a perfectly Western model society, but has been the staging ground for Western ideas ever since then for about 80 years. Later in 1948, the North invaded the South and tried to, from across the 38th parallel, and tried to take, and got all the way to the very bottom of it. The Americans under Douglas MacArthur landed in the North, forcing the war back there. And then the Chinese, after they became communist in 1949, sent 1 million fighters there to help their communist allies in the North. And it led to a stalemate where the U.S. lost 30,000 men, along with the UN, the British, the Australians, folks like that. And that's how it started, and it's been like that ever since then. 7, you can ask me anything you would like. Dev, I don't share where I'm from. Do we know how and where AIDS got started? The rumor it was from human scream monkeys. That's definitely not true. The first cases were in the 50s, but it really became prominent in the 1970s, especially the 80s. So let me see here. What is your take on the Bolsheviks? Obviously, the most extreme branch of Russian communism basically screwed over all the other types, and Trotsky screwed them over too, to basically usurp power and then declare that they were the only true communist party and that the Communist Party was the only true party. Evolved into the Communist Party of Stalin and Khrushchev and all those guys. Do you think that Christopher Columbus discovered us first? No. I don't like that terminology anyways. That area was discovered by the various different Native Americans with their various different backgrounds and cultures long before you ever get the Westerners, the Vikings, let alone Columbus, who was almost 500 years later. Think Zelensky will be assassinated? Nope, but Putin definitely wants that. If geography is the why because of where, then is history the why because of when? Yes. I like that. That's very good, Henry. Let me see here. Do you think there were ancient aliens? What you might be referring to are what are called the Anunnaki, who were supposedly, according to ancient Mesopotamian and Assyrian cultures, visitors from the stars who might be interpreted as aliens. They were considered to be gods. Even the Old Testament talks about it. The mighty men of renown, who were half-breeds between angels and humans. These are ancient legends. The fact that they're in every ancient society, and you have giants in every ancient society, shows a lot about human nature. Let me see here. How Hitler died. He shot himself. Although I don't know about these Argentinian documents that say he escaped, but supposedly him and Eva Braun got married, took cyanide, and he shot himself in his bunker on April 30th before the Allies could get to him. Let me see here. Gordon Freeman? Who is Gordon Freeman? Yeah, that's true, Dos Equis guy. It definitely was inaccurate. That History Channel's kind of lost its way of ancient aliens. Have Jewish people ever committed genocides on other races of people? What's fascinating to me about Judaism as the religion is it's the only religion that does not really believe in proselytization. At least it's the only monotheistic religion that does that. And the truth of the matter is, I think that there is a lot of heinous things that have happened in Gaza and in Palestine throughout its history, and not all of them have been caused by Hamas or the other terrorist organizations or political groups that have led the Palestinians. Many of the Jews have done, and the Israelis have done horrible things in that area. I would not say that the actions in Gaza actually constitute a genocide yet, but it's bad and it needs to stop sooner rather than later. War crimes, possibly. Genocide, unlikely. If the Turks do not admit that there is a genocide based off the death of 1 million Armenians, which they say is 300,000, but it's 1 million, then you can't say that the Jews have committed a genocide. They can't say, on the other hand, the Jews are committing a genocide in Gaza, because the basis of the ethnic cleansing and removal of people and dispossession is from that genocide, the Armenian genocide of 1915 to 1916. So what's fascinating is the Israelis, the Jews through their history have had very little opportunity for conquest colonization, this might be one of the very few times. Thank you, Be Happy. I appreciate that. You're very nice. That is our pin. Oh, he's saying that to Dos Equis guy. Never mind. But yes, Dos Equis guy is very interesting. So Moscow's continent weight now is Africa. This is the most poor continent in the world. Yes. Main reason for that is political instability, kleptocracies, ineffective government, which has led to untold human suffering, which also has included the Europeans decentralizing them, putting borders around them that didn't work, and then leaving them without much to do about nothing. Yeah. No, Matt, I'm going to stick to my turns because this is my channel. Let me see. Were the Bolsheviks Jewish? A large proportion of the Bolsheviks were Jews. Trotsky and Lenin were both Jewish. Opinion, Aisha is asking, opinions on transgender ideology. Please don't be transphobic. I would never be transphobic at all. I'm sure there are trans people who come into the channel, enjoy what I talk about history, and like and subscribe, and they are very welcome here, as is anyone of any background, whatever their beliefs. The truth of the matter is there have been transgender people, transvestitism, cross-dressers, whatever, that's not the same as transgenderism, but people with non-conformity to the gender binary throughout all of human history, and to say that there hasn't is historically ignorant. Whether it is, and these legends, there have been legends of men and women who have changed genders or lived as different people. Elagabalus, the famous Roman emperor, who I have a video on for my Roman Emperor series, believed him was a biological man who believed themselves to be a woman, and it would be probably considered non-binary today, and was biologically homosexual, was prostituted himself to women, but also dressed as a woman and preferred many of the entrapments of being a woman. So that is something that is in history, and you can't pretend that it's not. That doesn't have anything to do with the science of transgenderism. It just has to do with the science of us. So I hope I was not transphobic at all there. Do you think AI will become sentient? I hope not, because then we're really in trouble. Check out History Hyenas. It's a comedy history podcast. I will, Don, and hopefully you're going to them and telling them to check us out. Do you know anything about El Salvador's history? A little bit, not too much. Obviously conquered by the Spanish as part of their conquest of what's called New Spain, Central America. What is going to happen if Putin goes? Will war stop or get worse? It all depends who succeeds Putin. And he's very successful and popular in Russia. Dale, I mean, do you know anything about El Salvador's football war? I think Guatemala or Ecuador or Nicaragua? I've heard a little bit about it. The soccer war, I think it was with the Nicaraguans. I don't know much more past that. Thank you, Time Hofkin. I hope to go on Jeopardy at some point. Rabbi, I don't know about North Korea being restricted. I think they're very restrictive. Americans hate socialism because they equate socialism with communism, which was their enemy throughout the 20th century. And if you look, don't think it, and it was more so than Nazism their enemy, and for many good reasons, but many reasons Americans didn't even learn. I've learned them, but the Americans didn't. My cousin has a history degree, but works in a factory. What's the point of a history degree if you don't teach? Writing, doing this, the deep level of study can make you an expert and know niche things, and that's the cool facts and the interesting facts about our human condition. History is about the human condition and about ideas, and I bring those ideas to you guys all the time. Yes, I've heard that, Steve. It's very sad that they got killed. Thank you so much, Jason. I'm glad that you're here and joining us, and your expertise is very welcome on this channel. And I will pin that. That is our pinned comment of the day. Please be sure to go like Jason M and become a friendly neighborhood historian by liking and subscribing. So let me see here. I'm way behind in the chat. I'm trying to catch up. I'm almost at an hour. I think we should have respect for our neighbors. This is the key to respect people around you. Yes. And people define neighbors differently, unfortunately. It's more entertaining hearing history from a human being than AI or Google. I use AI images once in a great while if I can't get the image I want, but I generally only use human images, paintings, pictures, and my own commentary, and I don't care if my voice has bumps and bruises in it. You get to hear me explain history. Sorry if I'm not perfect. Yeah. Have you read about the giant of Kandahar? No, but I would be happy to pick a side. And it's good to see you again, by the way. Why do Americans want freedom of speech? Why do you need the right to insult people, to shout profanities at public servants, to be a horrible person? Part of the ability to think is the ability to spread ideas, and bad ideas deserve their place in the sun. I'm a free speech absolutist. People come onto this channel spreading all sorts of ideas. Look at the chat. Look at some of the things people say. I'm sorry, no offense to any of you. They're stupid ideas sometimes, and I share stupid ideas. The ability to share your ideas means the ability to be wrong, and I would much rather have that than the alternative, which is which is restrictions on that. People should be able to spread their ideas anywhere they want. I spread an idea here on YouTube that simply said, I think that the Nazis would have let Great Britain and the United States go if they hadn't engaged them after they took over France in 1940. I was flagged as a white supremacist and the video was removed. That's the alternative that I hate. My idea might be wrong, but argue the idea. Don't shut me down. I was not saying anything good, by the way, about the Nazis. I absolutely hate them and find them disgusting and despicable. Who is John Galt? I don't know. I haven't read Atlas Shrugged. Why not just have freedom of expression? You can state your opinion, but you cannot go around purposefully insulting people. Why not? And people do fight back on that. That's why there's slander and libel and all these things. If people are lying about people, they sue them. You can't just say something and have no repercussions, but you can say something without being told you can't ever say anything. Why did Britain and the USR and the USA not want France to get nukes? Because the French hadn't done much to win World War III. Who do you think is the most influential person in recorded history? Summer, I'm saying this not as a historian. Well, I am saying this as a historian, and I'm saying this only as a historian, actually. I think Jesus of Nazareth is the most influential person in history. The story of the West is the story of the Christian church. You don't have the Christian church without Jesus of Nazareth. I'm not saying this because of any personal religious views I may or may not have. I'm not saying this because a lot of people in the United States are Christians. I'm not saying anything about the validity of Jesus' teachings or his resurrection or death or anything along that. I'm just saying that story of Jesus has changed the world. There are more books written on him than any other figure in human history. The literal dating that we use, be it the politically correct CE BCE or BC AD, which I prefer because at least it's because I don't find BCE or CE compelling, is based on his birth. If you're that person, you know that's crazy. And Julius Caesar's up there, Stalin's up there for all the wrong reasons, Hitler's up there for all the wrong reasons, Gandhi's up there, and Muhammad's up there. But I think you've got to go. I think the influence on Western history and the way the Western world developed is unfathomable because of Christianity. Did Japan commit genocide in Korea or China? Very interesting question, Henry. You're talking about World War III, Unit 731, the Japanese prisoner of war camps, what the Japanese did to the Chinese and the Koreans. I wouldn't say that so much, but I would say that there was definitely ethnic cleansing, war crimes, and crimes against humanity that don't get the attention they deserve because we focus on the Nazis and the Holocaust, which is fair. For years, the USA denied bombing Laos. Yes, but they did. It was part of the Vietnamization of the Nixon campaign. You're watching me from Zambia. Thank you for joining us from Zambia. That's really awesome. To some, the American empire is already falling. We only left Africa as fast as we did and in such a mess like we did because of the U.S. and the USSR forcing us to. Yes, and it didn't go well. And in colonizing and imperializing them in the first place wasn't a great idea if it meant look at the suffering. I know, Harry, you love the British, and I do too. But human zoos, really? The first concentration camps were created by the British. You know that, right? I don't know what APICA. You mean APAC? They have a huge political influence, that's for sure. The Jews fought against the Crusaders. Actually, the Crusaders fought against the Jews, slaughtering lots of them. Yes, Matt. Technically, Lenin had some Jewish ancestry. It's never been verified, but he was Jewish. And many Russians who were not told they were Jewish were Jewish. Russian Jews are one of the largest groups of Jews in the world. What do you think of the Supreme Court ruling in the UK saying that the legal definition of a woman is based on biological sex? I do believe that, technically speaking, legal definitions should match what we know about from nature and things like that. That doesn't mean to automatically invalidate somebody who has a brain that is more suited to be a male brain, despite the fact that they were born in a female body. I don't like to speak on social and political issues giving an opinion so much as I like to give an objective and an idea as possible based on historical and geopolitical trends. Do you think Emperor Joseph II, the second of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, was a good emperor but just ahead of his time? Yes, he was ahead of his time. By the time he took over, it was too late. What's the only country in South America that has both the Pacific and Atlantic Ocean? That would be, is it Chile? I think it's Chile, Fidel. Native American. Oh, Drew, great to see you. Native American term is offensive. I was born here, so were many of my ancestors. Indians are not only native. I use that interchangeably with Indians because Indians is an offensive either, and they are. Yes, that's very true. Thank you, Be Happy. I appreciate that. It's nice here in the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel studio. We're over an hour. I'm going to be wrapping up soon. I'm just trying to catch up with the chat. Thank you, Tales of the Unexpected. I really appreciate that. And that's our pinned comment for today. Please be sure to like and subscribe. What is balkanization? What is the risk of it happening in America? Balkanization is the cutting up of areas into smaller nations and then them being influenced by larger entities around them. And the fear about that happening in America is the secession of several different states like Texas, California, Idaho, and Oregon forming their own little thing there. It's according to you, which is the best constitution? I think the British Constitution is actually the best because you don't have the American Constitution, which has influenced so many others without the British. John Galt is indeed a designer. Which is the best country? Oh, I mean, for me, in my studies, I can't pick because I'm a historian. That's me tipping my hand. Who is Ulysses S. Grant? 18th President of the United States, Civil War general who ran that tidal wave to become president and fought for African American civil rights, but had a corrupt administration that ruined his chances of achieving them. Seth, great to see you. Why do we allow some countries to have nukes like India, but we are not okay with places like Iran? Maybe a stupid question. Because in the determination of the United States, Iran will destroy Israel and the United States if it has nukes. India has not. Whose history is older, Japan or China? They are both equally ancient. Japan actually has the longest and most ancient imperial track record in history. Can you find Jesus on Ancestry? Probably not. Yeah, Gandhi wasn't always perfect, and no historical figure was. What is the point of having nukes if it is mad? Because it's a deterrent. Because if the other side knows it's going to get destroyed when it destroys you, then it will be less likely to use them. That was Dwight Eisenhower's strategy. Have you heard the old saying, he folded like the French army? Yes, the French get a lot of crap for that. Okay, what's the news about Thailand earthquake? I haven't heard much about it, but I think 100,000 people died, or 10,000. It was awful. The Crusades were justified. Only the first one that was successful. I'm sorry, Real Madrid is bad. Do you know the history of why Romans first hated Christians that turned to using Christianity? The Emperor Constantine made it legal. They first hated them because Nero started persecutions, and they were just easy to pick on, and they were known for not being militant and bellicose and not fighting back. If Israel's expansion into Gaza and the West Bank is not stopped, then they will take over the entire Middle East like falling dominoes. I don't think so. They don't have enough to take over Turkey, if you consider that, Saudi Arabia, Iran. They're not going to take over Egypt or the UAE, which admits that they have a right to exist. If you could change one thing in history, what would it be and why? Oh, that's a good question. I would want to keep Lincoln alive. But there's so many close choices. I think President Trump would disagree about the most influential person in history being Jesus. Yes, he would. He's compared himself to Jesus. So, do you think that it's gay if you are attracted to a trans woman if you are a male? A little bit. Jesus, history, all we know, answers you can find reading Bible, all is will you believe? That's a personal question. I don't answer personal questions. And M, my wonderful moderator, is here in the chat, and he has posted the Substack, the Patreon, all that great stuff where you can find me. Thank you so much, M, for helping us out. What's the most likely scenario for World War IV? Thank you for calling. I'm going to wrap it up here. An invasion of Poland by Russia, an invasion of an EU country by the Russians. That's the most likely scenario for World War IV. Russia will never join NATO. NATO was created to destroy Russia. I'm sorry, I did not catch up to the chat. I'm really sorry, guys. I really wanted to answer all of your questions. I'm a little bit behind, but I'm going to call it here. I've got to get going. It's 3:45, and I've let time get away with me. I've gone a little bit over, so I hope you appreciated that. Yeah, and I thank you so much for joining us. Please like and subscribe, become a friendly neighborhood historian. It's easy as that. I really appreciate everyone joining us. I hope you have a really wonderful Friday. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the dot. I will be on time instead of being way early today. I look forward to seeing you guys. Have a great and safe Friday evening and Saturday, and take care. Thank you so much for joining us. Consider the Patreon and all that other great stuff. I hope it's great to see everybody. Bella, Harry, your great questions. I really appreciate that, Seth, and the rest of you. Take care. Have a great Friday. See you tomorrow. And remember, love history. Bye-bye now.